Hello and welcome to 365 Days Towards Racial Change. My name is Pullman and I'm back, and this is day 91 of our project here collectively together. We're looking at Black issues, history, slavery, oppression, successes, failures of Black folks, white folks, everybody in between in America as we all congregate in this huge melting spot here on this speck of dust in the universe. I want you to Google pale blue dot and see how big the Earth is compared to the rest of the universe, and yet we are fighting and scratching and being exclusive, discriminatory, and all kinds of things on this little speck of dirt. But in the grand scheme of things, just makes my head spin. As I've come along in this project, two thoughts have emerged that I want to kind of help it guide this project from here on out. First thought has two parts. First part is, does the slave mind, is that conditioning still being perpetuated from generation to generation among Black folks, especially those Blacks descended from slaves? Second thought is, does the white mind of privilege, the attitude of favor, just kind of a you understood subject of ease through the American landscape prevail and is passed down intuitively through the environment, taught educationally? Is that continuing on from generation to generation? And my second thought is my concern for financial literacy, political literacy, is starting to become a burden of mine, especially as we approach the 2020 election. More so, financial literacy. My take is I want to be on the winning side, of the side having the advantage. And there are some rules, there are some ways to participate that in some ways may transcend the color lines and barriers that Americans have created over time. There are realistically oppressions and things we need to be realistic about in America, but there are some loopholes even for Black folks that can get around the color barriers, because the answer is green, and that can be a motivator to quickly desegregate any interactions in America, as what we see as we continue in this project. I'm inspired by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. I'm going to give you 3 works of his I read and we reference through the year. First one is A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. Second one was Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice. And finally, Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America, Powernomics. You can find Dr. Anderson, powernomics.com, also the Heritage Institute. Read those works. They may be a bit dated, more than a decade old at this point, but the message is timeless. And it's not as though Black folks or white folks have gotten it together or adhere aggressively to his message. But if we can just plant the seeds, begin a discussion, begin moving in the right direction, stop digging our respective holes in ourselves, in our community, and begin climbing out of these situations piece by piece. A big piece of it is finding just some adhering to some educational components, being realistic about the origins and the present nature of the difficulties oppressing us here in America. Behind me, you see hashtag us too. This is Black women discoursing, coming together. Essentially, it's kind of a answer to the hashtag Me Too movement, which is getting a lot of press lately. Joe Biden and whatnot. Just Google current events for April 1st, 2019, and you'll understand the connection there. So women do have some specific issues. We're focused on Black issues first, though, man or woman. Also, go to Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, find more people hanging out there, getting together. It's like a Black Facebook, but it's the information age. If you found me here on YouTube, then you can get plenty of information. Whatever your flavor is, true or false, you can find it now on the internet. It's right there at your fingertips. We digress, and I guess as the year goes on, we're going to mature and go into other areas. But right now, our foundation is Dr. Anderson's work, getting us connected with Black communities. Uncle Tom's Cabin is another work we reference by Harriet Beecher Stowe, white female abolitionist back in the mid-1800s. This book informs a lot of theater, interactions between Black and white, the understanding of slave life. You know, those, her fictional work is the only kind of major work I know that favors the plight of the slave, Black slave, and sheds light on the slave life in America. You notice the oppressors don't write those kind of, or at least I've not ran across any fictional work of the oppressors. You know, you don't see the white supremacist fictional literature about how good it is to be a slave master and whatnot. They just go on with their attitude and their thinking. So that's some things that are unique in the abolitionist world, the emancipated world. Okay, what else? So the fictional work, today being April 1st, we look at Black First, and we reference a book. I forgot to kind of bring it over here. I don't want to walk off screen. But you just go to Amazon, find Black First. It's a tome of Black First, which are legitimate firsts. You find Blacks being the first to do something. But I'm looking for the innovators. I'm looking for creationists in the sense that, you know, something new has been created, like a new office, a new method, new product, service that's never happened before being introduced into the American landscape. And so while that book has an incredible amount of entries, it's mostly about Blacks coming along, you know, putting themselves in the place of where whites normally inhabit. Like the presidency is a good example. I'm not going to talk about in depth about President Barack Obama because we've had plenty of presidents before him. You know, so being the first Black president doesn't impress me because being a president is commonplace in America. You know, being the first black president of a college or president of a bank or something. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the inventor, that man, black man or woman, bringing a total new dimension, creating a whole new way of expressing themselves in American life. See, because blacks I don't do the president of the United States or president of corporations, because I don't want it to appear that, this black individual has suddenly struck with the ability, like they're some kind of trained monkey or something. Blacks, and you hear me say this often, blacks don't lack ability. We lack opportunity. Any black can do anything that anyone else is doing in the world. Shouldn't be some strange and amazing thing that the black person is a president of the United States, or does brain surgery, or does runs a corporation. That's not anything special. Or goes into space or whatever. No, whatever human beings do, blacks can do. That's not a new thing, but invent something, um, bring a new process, maybe improve a process or something like that. That's what I'm looking for with Black First. And there are plenty of examples in the text, Black First. If you get the text or Google stuff, you'll find some Black First. But that's my intention with Black First. Like, this first human doing this happens to be black. That's what I'm looking for. So today we're going to talk about day 91 here, Black First. Archibald J. Motley Jr. and his work. You can tell his work influenced, if you are of any age, then I'm sure in the 70s you watched the sitcom, black sitcom, Good Times, and the JJ character, Junior Walker's character, was a painter, and his paintings would frame the show. And so as you hear the music, the intros and outros of Good Times, you see this mural of blacks gathered dancing, and they call it like a jazz art. Now that's a guy, Ernie Barnes, I think was his name. But he came after a guy named Archibald J. Motley Jr. And he, if you look at his paintings, you could see where Barnes gets his influence. So Barnes' figures are much more thin and drawn in, but it's good painting and whatnot. Art is a good kind of thing to talk about today. If you follow hip hop and rap, Nipsey Hussle assassinated today. Apparently, he had turned his life around and was doing great things for the community. But black folks, or whatever forces, just come out and just snatch the life out of our leaders. We'll have a past or whatever. I don't know the motivations, don't know. I don't even follow hip hop or rap. It's a blurb all day on CNN. So I just inserted, it dates this material, and it shows how blacks have a long way to go. You don't see the white folks killing off their entertainers so much like that. John Lennon is probably the last like white person I see, but he was killed by a nut job, so it's not it's not the same with black folks. We have this violent thing going on, and so we can liken it to Malcolm X or any other black leader that's finds themselves betrayed by black folks, or at least black folks pulling the trigger. So just had to put the blurb about Mr. Hussle in there. As far as just the artistry, uh, I've never heard his music. I'm probably never going to listen to Mr. Hussle's music, but I understand he was an activist in the community, coming from a pretty intense gang affiliation with the Crips out there on the West Coast. Now, I put all that in there because Mr. Motley Jr. was the same kind of activist with his visual art, and his paintings. Oh, he was innovative in a couple ways. He brought the black female form more into the foreground in art and paintings, which was relatively new for the times. It's like the 1930s about. Your brief notes have more specific ideas about time frames and things like that, but he brought about the black female form more pronounced in his work. He's contemporary of the Harlem Renaissance era, music, dance, art, all these things becoming pronounced. Although he never lived in Harlem, he's one of the few that could get away with that trick. But when art or a product is good, it crosses those boundaries. It transcends that space and time element especially in America, I'll say. And so he never lived in Harlem, never made it, made his home there. He's from New Orleans. His family moved up to Chicago. His father was one of the Pullman porters. His father was a man named George. Go check out that movie. It's a very good movie about the Pullman porters and the creation of the union around that industry. So he never lived in Harlem, but his works are popularized, made their way, so influential in bringing out black influence issues and such that it made its way into Harlem. He studied in France in 1927, influenced by the works of the Louvre, very famous art, mecca of art there in France. He was very much inspired by the Dutch painters and their paintings while he was there. This was after graduating from the Art Institute of Chicago in 1918. And he saw how, now he was a man, he was much like me, grew up, raised in white environments and whatnot, but he was not insensitive to the plight of black folks there, all black folks in America. He understood slavery and that there is a color line as far as resources, wealth, and whatnot. So he endeavored to bring about some change and to work in those circles. So he used his art And so his art, being very descriptive in his art with the colors, and especially one thing that stood out to me in my research was that he brought out black people in group. There was a unity there, unity, uh, lack of conflict. There's festivity, there's coming together, and that's one thing that stuck out to me. Because while blacks do kind of gather, um, there can be a sense of internal conflict, and you can sometimes in black gatherings, the alphas just manage to gravitate, and one person has got to show their dominance over the space. It's just an incredible phenomenon that we can find over and over and over again in black circles. That kind of thing, though, is absent in his artwork. The blacks are expressive, they're dancing, they're collected together in unity, having a good time always. So he was, I talked a little about Roosevelt's New Deal policy. We talked about that a couple of days ago. Now here is a positive point in Roosevelt's New Deal, in that Motley Jr. was commissioned to participate in the Works Progress Administration, which was kind of a branch of this big umbrella New Deal conversation that was happening, the Reconstruction after the destruction of the Great Depression. So he was commissioned to submit works along with that. He was also an innovator. His works are commentary on skin tone and the shades of blackness. And as I was doing the research, I realized, it's not, we never refer to it as shades of whiteness. Like, white is an absolute, undefiled category. You don't have darker shades of whites, you just have lighter shades of black. I feel like there's a conversation there. But anyway, his pieces were commentary on skin tone and how the different layers of skin tone presented kind of a hierarchy of access to wealth and resources in America. Motley Jr. himself was, a lighter skinned brother, much lighter than me, and which gave him access to a lot of to wealth and resources. He recognized this. He also lived in a white section of town, married a white woman, apparently had little of resistance to his movement in white society, in whiteness. You find that today too, with darker a person is, that they're going to find this more natural resistance to how they live, move, and breathe in America. It's very, very sad to see how Americans just default into this darker color, just encourages oppression and negativity towards towards just living the same lives as white folks. It's not right, and we got a long way to go, everybody, to get there. So his works are influential. I don't show them here, but you can please Google his works. It's very interesting, his stuff. Archibald J. Motley Jr. And he is today's Black First, April 1st, 2019. So join me again tomorrow. We're going to start a series. We're going to do some mock interviews with the signers of the Declaration of Independence to see where their heads were at when they signed the document, what they adopted, what their motivations were for participating in signing that document and such. So stay tuned. We'll have a couple days of hearing their words and kind of recreating their mindset back in the mid to late 1700s that brought them to take that huge risk. But at the same time, keeping blacks disenfranchised and subject to the same oppression that they resisted and severed themselves from by signing that document. We'll see what comes out in the research. Thanks for hanging out with me again. That's day 91 out of the way. 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tomlins Nyback, and we will see you tomorrow.